Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Malik Hollister and Tyrone, and it's the day, not Sunday, Saturday. I'm getting my days mixed up because usually we started recording on Sunday, but it's the day before Valentine's Day. So if you guys have a significant other or a special somebody, whatever, happy Valentine's Day to them. Anyway, let's get back to the sports. So last week was the Super Bowl. We all got it wrong. I was just talking about them before that. We all thought Kansas City was gonna come out strong and win, but Tom Brady, he got his 7th chip, and now everybody talking about he the GOAT of GOATs and like he the greatest winning champion of all time, including all sports and all that, etc., etc. And I had to tell people to pump their brakes. I got a couple of like Facebook page battles between that and Michael Jordan and other stuff like that. So before I get into all of that, I wanted to get you guys' opinion on the game. So I'll go down the line from like Hollis to Malik and then Tyrone.
All right, so the Super Bowl. Congratulations to Tampa Bay for winning. The game honestly was kind of boring for me because I'm not really a Tom Brady fan, but I got to give the man his credit. He won 7 championships. That hasn't been done. He has more championships than every NFL franchise. That's insane. But from the time the game started, it was going good in the beginning. Then the first quarter, I forgot exactly what play it was. The referees just started being ridiculous with the penalties. The one that really stood out to me the most when Bashar Breeland was going with Mike Evans. Mike Evans kicked Bashar's Breeland shin by not on purpose.
That was the worst call. That was the worst one.
Yeah, he tripped. Like the man tripped because he got kicked in the shin and he accidentally made Mike Evans fall. And they talk about pass interference. I'm like, how? And when they showed the replay, it was just ridiculous. I was just like, after that, I was like, this game is going to be, in favor of Tampa Bay, which it was. But you got to give credit when it's credit's due. Tampa Bay's defense was ridiculous. Shaquille Barrett, all those other guys, JPP, they stepped up and did their thing. The receivers as well, too. They had to do. Gronk did his thing. Kansas City, I guess that was like a shell shock for them, but I think they'll come back next year stronger. And, that this should be like a motivation for them. Like, all right, guys, we got to get it together. Like, all right, I think Pat Mahomes is going to go to like some next level next year. Hopefully with his turf toe surgery, he's all good with everything with that. But congratulations again to Tampa Bay, Kansas City. I'm sure they're going to be back. But it was a okay game, but the referees, they kind of just made the game not really interesting to watch. And it had one of the lowest ratings for a Super Bowl in past years, which is insane. But it's crazy.
I didn't know about that part, but I think just to pigtail on what you said, and I'm going to let Melly go in and Tyrone, is that you're 100% correct. I feel that a lot of the narrative was a lot of times, a lot of my friends are saying like, yo, they felt like the game was being rigged and stuff like that. I hate to say that when a sport, especially when your team is not winning, a lot of people are like, oh, the game is rigged, but you can kind of just tell when you're watching the game, this tone, sometimes how it's being set in favor of a certain narrative. And I believe that, I'm happy for them, like you said, Todd Bowles and all those guys and them and the team, but I just felt that it was a little bit kind of fishy. But yeah, Melly, go ahead.
Yeah, so like Hollister said, as far as the game itself, it started out kind of mostly on like an even kind of playing field, and then they had some big penalties. Like he said, that was the worst one of them all, but that really turned the tide because, there were several penalties that, either gave a first down or there was one that could have been an interception and that was overturned. There was just several like key kind of plays that turn that around. But I think also the other big piece of it was the line of scrimmage, or not the line of scrimmage, the offensive line and defensive line on both teams. Patrick Mahomes, the 2 tackles on Kansas City weren't there. He had a rough time. You could see he barely had any time to do anything. And Tampa Bay really took advantage of that. You see a lot of the plays, he had the run, scramble. He made a lot out of nothing. Not for nothing. Was it his best game? No, right? But he went out there and he tried it. And if you look at it, there was a couple plays. The man is like 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, falling down. And he threw catchable passes. Like, they weren't perfect, but like 2 of them especially were like Hail Mary plays that were actually kind of catchable. The people on the other end didn't get to it.
Yeah.
But either way, Patrick Mahomes, he went out there and he competed. He tried. He still showed elite level talent and quarterback ability despite the end result and the score. I mean, And props to Tampa Bay. I mean, they saw what Tyreek Hill did to them earlier in the season, and they adjusted. They were like, that ain't happening again. He was not alone, not once, and throughout the entire game. And, their defense really, really won them the game overall. Like, obviously, Tom Brady in the offense, they did a lot. Him and Gronk had a couple more special plays and were able to make further history in that way.
Yeah.
But Tampa Bay's defense really held that Kansas City offense to no touchdowns, which is like just it says a lot. And once again, I definitely think the two tackles being out had a factor. Patrick Mahomes also dealing with turf toe and a couple of other things, but not to make excuses. Even with all that, Tampa Bay did go out there and their defense really won them the game. And then on the offensive end, Tom Brady did what he needed to do to put the team in a position.
Yeah.
And, they capitalized and, they did what they needed to do. Now, I do feel like Kansas City is still in it as long as they could keep most of their pieces. I know some people already signed anyway. They're going to come back, and hopefully, barring no injuries, they make another run or they have another shot or crack at it. Tampa Bay probably going to try to hold on and see if they could make another run. So it should be interesting. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the most entertaining game, but
yeah,
it is what it is. I would have liked to see it though, which we could never see if Kansas City didn't have those injuries. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Tyrone?
Yeah, to piggyback on what Menelik was saying with the offensive linemen, and one of those offensive linemen is Eric Fisher, #1 overall pick from about, I think, 2012, 2013, one of those years. So he was a big loss. He was the left tackle. So that's a big loss for them. But overall, the Super Bowl, it was disappointing. If you're a Chief fan, I give Patrick Mahomes credit because to me, it seemed like he was the only one that kind of showed up.
Yeah.
And he was just running for his life the whole game. And those passes Menelik was talking about, Kelsey dropped a couple of those. So even Hill dropped one or two. So there were times where they had a chance to get a first down on a third down play. Like, who knows how the game would have turned if those catches were made. And it's like what I said last week. I expected a high-scoring game, but it's Kansas City's defense. That's the key. If they would have played well, I think the offense would have had a lot more confidence and still, put pressure on the Tampa defense. I think when Tampa got out to their strong start, I think that gave the defense more confidence, and they were able to, open the playbook and just take more gambles on Patrick Mahomes and them. Yes, the penalties killed them. A lot of pass interference calls and stuff like that. And don't forget one other thing too. Not only were Kansas City playing, Tom Brady, and I said it the other day. I think on paper, Tampa Bay had more talent than KC. It's just that KC had the better players. But let's not forget, and I know everybody, the joke was it was Pat Mahomes against the referees and Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, and this is important. It may not seem as important to other people, but I do take it as it being important. The game was in Tampa Bay's home field. That's a home game.
Yeah.
A lot of people forgot that part. That's a home game. They didn't have to travel. The Chiefs got there on Friday. Yeah. Usually when you go to the Super Bowl, you get there a week before. They had to come in on Friday. Now, again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but those little things do matter.
Yeah.
They didn't look themselves. They didn't look themselves. And with all this COVID stuff going on, they weren't the same team. And give credit to Tom Brady because guess what? Yeah. They were in the same situation as them, COVID and everything. But at the end of the day, they had that little advantage of having the game in their home field. So I'm not a Tom Brady guy, and the whole GOAT of GOAT things, I guess we'll get into that in a few. But I'm not gonna. We'll answer that in a few. But I give him credit. 7 championships in a football, in the NFL. That's tough. He beat Charles Haley. I think Charles Haley has 6. He was a defensive player for the 49ers and the Cowboys, so he won those with those teams. He passed him. But yeah, to win 7 championships and then one of them at 43 years old, that is impressive. and I tipped my hat to him. He damn near lost the trophy the other day.
I know, so that.
But
he was drunk as hell. That's what happened.
Yeah. So I give them credit. Gronk played well. Fournette played well. Antonio Brown caught a couple of passes. It's kind of ironic that him and Le'Veon Bell were on opposite teams.
Yeah.
Playing in the Super Bowl, and you just see how the Steelers look. The Steelers haven't been the same since those two players left.
Exactly.
So it's kind of funny how that happens. And then AB gets a ring after his crazy year he had in 2019 and in early 2020. So hopefully he keeps his head on straight and continue to be the great player that he is and was. And we'll see how that goes. But congrats to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Hopefully they don't win it again next year. My Niners will. And
wait for that.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. I feel that they look flat. Kansas City looked flat. They didn't look like they was ready. And like Tom said, usually when they come into the Super Bowl, they're pretty much prepared. They pretty much like have the whole week there. They do a media day. They have this whole experience, and they get there like on Friday. And usually with a football team, you need like a whole almost a whole week for like a rundown to like be able to practice, be able to do different things. And the team had a lot of issues. They had issues with COVID, where like the whole squad almost got COVID because they was going to get haircuts, like little things like that. I kind of threw off the momentum, I feel. And like Tyrone said, it was, and Malik and even Hollister, like there was a couple of questionable calls. Also, there was a lot of catchable passes, and it was like a touchdown that was dropped, I think, by Tyreek Hill. Kelsey usually like always on point, dropping passes. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard for the defense as far as Kansas City to get busy when every time you look at a person, you get a pass interference or you get a good play to stop them, and then they throw the flag late, and then they got to reverse it. So the game wasn't as entertaining, as I thought it would be. I wanted it to be a little bit more entertaining. I thought it would be like more action-packed, back and forth, like how we accustomed seeing like Kansas City do their thing, but they couldn't. And like y'all said, like Patrick Mahomes put his heart out there. He did everything he could. The man is falling down, going sideways, throwing bullet passes accurately to players that are catchable passes, and they missing it because they had like some of the offensive players on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers mic'd up, and it's like, I can't believe he made that pass. Like, this cat ain't human. Like, I know they're coming from a place when you winning and you feeling more confident. You like you give the person credit, but it's like, like he was doing some incredible things. But I want to segue real quick because to this GOAT talk. Like, I know it's very difficult, and it's always a bias in sports. I mean, we like basketball. I like all sports, but basketball is my favorite sport. People like baseball, people like football, and whatever other sport you like. But it's always been this bias where it's like, because it's football and it's one and done, it's the hardest thing to do. And for Tom Brady to get 7 championships and out of 10, that's more impressive than somebody else who have 7 tries to win, and et cetera, and et cetera. Now, the reason why I kind of discredit that, because yes, that is true that it is harder to win on football, but you don't have in basketball, an individual has to play both offense and defense. There's no like Michael Jordan them score, they time out, then they have defensive cards come in and do that. Some of these championships, especially some of the championships that Brady had won, he had played well and he tremendous as a quarterback. He had some cheating in there too. Let's not forget that. But you know what I mean? He had incredible defenses that really kind of won them the game, you know what I'm saying, and helped it. So it's a whole team effort, yes, but he's not the captain on the defensive end. He's the captain on the offensive end. And if he makes a couple of interceptions or blunders, the defense then tends to pick it up and help them along the lines. Where in basketball, yes, you do have 7-game series and stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, to go 6-0 to the finals, to come back retired, 3-peat twice, you know what I'm saying? To average the amount of points he was averaging on that limited amount of time he was playing, and to be so dominant and shutting down, talking about all Hall of Famers in his era. We cannot take away the greatness of Michael Jordan and then put somebody like a Tom Brady over it because of rings. Because I made this argument too, and I'm gonna let you guys get in there too. If you want to just talk about rings, Robert Horry got 7 rings. People want to say, he wasn't that important. Like, he was an important part of that team. Big Shot Bob, he was an important part of the team. Like, he wasn't no Jordan or Kobe or Shaq, but he was a crucial player. So to me, yes, what Tom Brady's done is tremendous, is great, especially in football, to have 7 rings, to win one at 43. All props to him. But to try to say he's the winningest of winners when you then forget about even Jordan. You got freaking Wilt, not Wilt. I mean, you got Bill Russell. You know what I'm saying? You got Kareem, who won mad college championships and stuff like that. Like, and in college is one and done. So like, you can't really like say that Tom Brady's the best winner because of recency bias, and you see the man, y'all want to find ways to like discredit Mike at him. So this, I feel, is a perfect segue to talk about, the GOAT of GOATs. Is also a segue to what Kevin Garnett said about modern day, athletes cooking, the old heads. So I will let Menla go, Holliston, and Tyrone.
All right. So, yeah, as far as, that whole GOAT of GOATs and Tom Brady and Jordan, other kind of categories. So, okay, on one hand, right, like you said, it is in some ways harder sometimes in football because you go through and in your playoffs, you got one game in each round to get it done, right? So things could go wrong and it's hard to consistently get back to the Super Bowl, right? But as you spoke to as well, there's also that element of, in basketball, let's say, Jordan could affect the game on both offense and defense and throughout the entire game. Like he's not sitting down. He's not, waiting for someone else to kind of have an impact. And in some of Jordan's key moments or games, like even in the joint with the Jazz, where he stripped Karl Malone and then went and then hit the other shot and did the play, is like sequences like that are not as, one player can't have that much of an impact on both offense and defense in football. But yeah, so I think, look, some people, like you said, depending on the sport or the perspective you want to take, it is some, subjective element to it. But I don't think you could just overall just be like, it's a runaway. Tom Brady's clearly the best winner because it's so much harder. Because like you said, there is different. It's more complex than that. You could look at it different ways, but I think there's a case to be made that, once again, I know how hard it could be in football, so I'm not minimizing that, right? But, there's the Eli situation, right? Where Brady went up against Eli and lost him twice, right? In the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or other things like in Jordan's prime years, right? He never like when he had an actual full season with a actual team around him, he never didn't win. And that means a lot, like, because people might say, oh, what about before he won his first one, or what about after? Yeah. But once again, Tom Brady doing it at 43 is impressive. Doing it throughout different decades, different times, that counts for something too. But football is also a different game. Like Tom Brady, with proper protection at 43, could still perform at elite level. And basketball, it's harder to do that. Now, LeBron is not, trying to go too much in that, but he's showing some potential to have a little more longevity and perform at an elite level. But the game of basketball is just, it also can be more physically demanding at the main positions, whereas in football, right, or baseball even, right, you could play a little bit longer. So like I said, we could break it down in so many different ways. So I definitely don't think you could just hands down say conversations over Brady is the GOAT. And then look how many years Brady played. Jordan did what he did. Yeah, his prime lasted a certain amount. He retired, this, that, and third. But like the nature of basketball gave Jordan also, in a sense, a smaller window to really perform at an elite level. So there's all many ways you could look at it. So for me, once again, Brady's up there, but I ain't putting him over MJ. And so that's my whole take on it.
Hollister?
Yeah, so to me, the whole GOAT of GOATs talk is kind of ridiculous because you're comparing two guys that play two different sports. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady plays football. Mike Jordan, we all know, play basketball. Basketball is, is a lot more, running up and down nonstop. You get a few minutes on the bench. I looked it up. Michael Jordan played over 1,000 games. Tom Brady played over like 300 and something games. Can't really compare that. And also, too, throughout Tom Brady's career, he had a good offensive line. So he really didn't get sacked or like hit as much as people would think. It's like, yeah, football is more, brutal, more grueling, but you got to look at it that way too. Like a lot of times he comes out, he scores, he goes on the bench for a while. He has good teams pretty much his whole career. Jordan, he had to go through all kinds of battles. The Pistons, the Knicks, we all know the battles Jordan, the physicality that he had to deal with. The man had to go do a whole off season, cut his vacation short to go train to get stronger, to go at these guys. And they basing it based off of rings. Like, you can't really base it off of rings. Tom Brady has 7, yes, but you can't say, oh, he's better than everybody in every sport. That's stupid to me. Yeah. You want to base it off of that. Bill Russell has 11 as a player and with 2 as a coach. Yeah. There's plenty of other guys that has more than Tom Brady, Sam Jones, John Havlicek, all those other guys. Steve Kerr made a joke the other day. He said, I had one more than Brady. So it's like, you can't really compare it based off of rings. The whole GOAT conversation to me, like GOAT of GOATs, is stupid. Like, if you're going to specify that, say it like, all right, just stick to the particular sport. Like, all right, say Tom Brady is the GOAT of football, Jordan's the best of basketball. You can't compare out of all the sports in the world. You can't compare and say he's the best out of everybody in every sport. It's a slap in the face and disrespectful to all the other legends, in my opinion. Yeah. Because it's stupid, but it is what it is. People going to have their opinion with this GOAT conversation regardless. It's never going to end. It's always going to be ongoing. And who knows, it could be some little kid now that's being born today that could be grown to be eventually past Tom Brady. What they going to say then? Yeah. So the whole conversation to me is pointless. It's like, all right, just stop it. Like, this is never going to end. It's based off opinions, but Tom Brady, he has 7. Jordan has 6. Jordan is undefeated. Tom Brady lost, what, two times in the 3 times? 3 times. Like, stop it. Like, just come on. Just leave it alone.
Exactly. Tyrone?
Nah. GOAT conversation's over. There's nothing to talk about. There's only one GOAT. There's only one GOAT. Why do you think you hear people say the Mike Jordan of football, the Mike Jordan of baseball, the Mike Jordan of this, the Mike Jordan of that? You don't hear nobody saying the Tom Brady of this, the Tom Brady of that. Yeah. You don't have that. There's no disrespect. Rest in peace. I don't hear Muhammad Ali of basketball, Muhammad Ali of this. The Bo Jackson of this, the Babe Ruth. Now, Babe Ruth might be the only one, but you only hear Mike Jordan. That's all you hear. So, Tom Brady, great player. I don't even have him as the GOAT in football. Yeah. Okay? Jerry Rice is the GOAT. Jerry Rice has more records than he has the most records in football. He has all these records, and he was doing it in an era with the receivers it wasn't a passing era. You imagine Jerry Rice in this era? If you look up Jerry Rice's numbers, Now, yes, he's a wide receiver. He needs the quarterback to feed him the ball. Yeah. But what he did in his era and this is another thing. This is the same way we talk about basketball being soft. Football is soft now. Football is soft now. They flop in football. I watch football all the time. They flop. These wide receivers flop. And a 15-yard penalty can help a quarterback a lot better. So they flop. They protect the quarterback more. If you barely touch them, it's roughing the passer. If you hit him too hard, it's roughing the passer. Sometimes you don't even hit him that hard, but if he falls a certain way, it's roughing the passer. And Tom Brady is probably the most protected quarterback among referees in the history of NFL. They don't hit the way they used to hit anymore in the NFL. They cut a lot of that out with concussions, and I think it's for the better. Don't get me wrong. I think health is first. But let's not forget, Jerry Rice played in an era where they went headhunting. Yeah. They headhunted you. They went for your legs. They did all this stuff. When you came across that middle from the slot, they knocking you the hell out. They knocking that helmet off. You can't do that no more. Yeah. You imagine Jerry Rice in this era? Jerry Rice would probably have double the numbers. It's the same thing with Mike. If Mike played in this era, Mike probably averaged 40 easily. Yeah. Easily. So to bring up Tom Brady as GOAT of GOATs, let's bring it back to the sport. As Menelik said, he plays one side of the ball. I'm basketball biased. I'm sorry, I'm basketball biased. They play offense and defense. In baseball, offense and defense. Football is the only sport in the world. Google it. Yeah. They are the only sport in this world where they have 2 separate players. They have players for 2 separate things. 3, I should say, because special teams. Yeah. Okay? Soccer doesn't have that. Volleyball doesn't have that. Wrestling, like you name the sport, they are the only sport that have certain players for certain things, as in offense and defense. You don't see that anywhere else. I could be wrong, but from what I know, that's the only sport. Like they bring out a whole group of players for a whole thing. You don't see that anywhere else.
You have 50-some players on the team.
I look at basketball players, like they brought up LeBron versus Brady. I'm picking LeBron because he plays offense and defense.
Yeah.
And Brady just plays offense. He gets off the field, he sits down, and yeah. So I would pick LeBron over Brady as far as who has the better career. But the GOAT thing is like we just said. Mike played offense and defense. He played, and Menelik. I love when he brought it up. He brought it up when we had our top 10. Michael did more in less years.
Yeah,
and that's big to me. Like, longevity is good. It just means you had a longer career. That's how I look at it. It's when we talked about Michael versus LeBron, it just meant that you had a longer career. It's what you do in that small window, to me, that defines greatness. Now, we bring up the rings. We know Bill Russell has 11. Sam Jones has 10. Let's not forget, in baseball, Yogi Berra has 10 for the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Babe Ruth has about 7, 8. Lou Gehrig has his 6, 7. Like, a lot of these Yankee players have that. Mickey Mantle, they got a handful themselves. So we can't walk around acting like that don't count. Yes, baseball, people look at baseball as it's a non-contact sport. They do a lot of walking. Sometimes they stand on a base, but they play a lot more games than football. It's like Hollis said, Mike played 1,000 games. Tom Brady played 300. Don't get me wrong, football's a violent sport, but they only play 16 a year. Yeah. I can't put an athlete that plays 16 a year over somebody that plays 82 a year or 162 like in baseball.
Yeah.
So, yes, Tom Brady is the best champion, and he's the best. I give him the Bill Russell title. They're the best. They're the greatest champion. They won the most rings. But the greatest player, I don't look at Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback or the best player. I think Jerry Rice is the best quarterback, player ever, and Peyton Manning is the best quarterback I ever saw. So I'm not putting him over them, but he is. He's the top player. But GOAT of GOATs, there's only one, and his name is Michael Jordan. Simple as that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I'm not going to say much, but I just wanted to just touch on this real quick. Because I just think that, you know how it is. Baseball is Americans' pastime, and American sport are now like football, and, it's just having that. And I don't like to be being racing to it, but I just feel that, basketball don't really get a lot of respect because a lot of people is a predominantly black sport, even though you do have a lot of black people in the NFL and stuff like that. It's just that the quarterback is what's seen to be the leader and the head of the team. To me, a quarterback is important, having that arm talent, but it's like they're not really scoring. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're throwing it to receivers. You're like a point guard. You know what I'm saying? Like, you passing the ball. So think about it. Yes, Tom Brady, and he had this when he played against the Giants a couple of times. He lost and everything like that. And somebody made the joke that if we lose to Eli in the Super Bowl, like, you can't even say you're the GOAT. But, hey, I'll take that. I'm a Giants fan. I take those rings. You know what I'm saying? But back to the story. Like, think about it like this, right? How many times that even on the Deflategate where he was throwing passes, I'm talking about pinpoint passes to these receivers, and they dropped it in the end zone, and he lost games because of that. Now, he did his part, but his teammates, he has to rely on the receivers, or whoever catches the ball, running back, tight end, whoever, to get into the end zone. Like, he's not the one influencing that point. You know what I'm saying? Whereas in basketball, right, and in baseball and stuff like that, and even soccer, the individual is actually impacting the score. You know what I mean? Like Michael Jordan, that game 6 against the Jazz, he had to drop that 45. He did everything for them to win that 6th championship. He did that. He played with the flu. He the one scoring and defending and doing all of stuff like that. So to me, like Tom said, yeah, we have a basketball bias, but at the end of the day, let's be realistic. Like, this sport, you are more involved in the outcome of what's going on, right? Yes, a quarterback can do that. Tom Brady can have, like, for instance, for them to even make it to the Super Bowl, he didn't play well that last game that they won to make it to the Super Bowl. The defense won that game for them and protected them and kept them to win it. So you have a whole nother unit while you sitting down chilling. That first year that Patrick Mahomes, when he missed the playoffs that year, when he first year he started, he was sitting on the sidelines hoping his defense get a stop against Tom Brady and the Patriots. If he got that stop, who knows? He might have had 2 rings already. So it's like he couldn't impact the game on that level. Like, he couldn't go out there and play defense. So you imagine having your fate in somebody else's hands, whereas Michael Jordan took his fate in his own hands, in a sense, right, to get those championships and won. Like Malik said, once he had a guy who's on the same level as him, right, or not even the same level as him, but, as good enough to win, he never lost. So to say that Tom Brady is the GOAT of GOATs, nah. He's the GOAT in football if you want to say that. And I understand Tom's argument. I don't have that much football knowledge, and I understand where he's coming from. And I do feel there's other players who have way more records, who did more. But like I said, we already know the quarterback is the quarterback, so everybody's going to be creaming off the quarterback. But the GOAT of GOAT is Michael Jordan. Like Tom said, you don't see people say the Michael Jordan of this, the Michael Jordan that, because Michael Jordan's name is a certain level, a certain standard of excellence. Right? Nobody say no Tom Brady of this. You know what I'm saying? They said Michael Jordan this. So yes, he won. Congratulations to you guys. You do your thing. Good for you. But segueing into that whole story, like Tom said earlier, if Michael Jordan would have played in this era, all right, and even Jerry Rice played in this era in football because of the tailor making for the rules to make it more offensively minded, Michael Jordan would average 40. And who knows how many yards Jerry Rice would average in a season. So my thing is that when Kevin Garnett, y'all know we had this discussion many times. I think we had this discussion. I don't know if we had the KG Tim Duncan discussion yet. We might have. I don't know.
We never did a full official one.
You know what I'm saying? But y'all know that after Michael Jordan, Kevin Garnett is my favorite player. After Michael Jordan, Town, everybody knows this. We go about it all the time. However, I always would keep it 100. When Kevin Garnett said what he said about Charlie Villanueva, I didn't say he didn't mean it. No, I knew he said that. When he said he didn't say it, I know Kevin Garnett said that. He might not wanted to say it and disrespect people who are cancer patients, but I know he said that. So when I got told the news from Tyrone, Menelik, and Hollister that KG came out and said like, yo man, players in his era and the eras before would get mixed out here because of the handles and the shooting and stuff like that, and that they can't hold a coin to these cats. You know what I'm saying? I think it's kind of far-fetched. And I dug into it. I heard Jalen Rose and them say his thing, and I kind of understand what KG was kind of trying to say. But no, I feel that players in like Michael Jordan era, yes, they was not as athletic as some of these guys, but their skill set and their basketball IQ were higher. Yeah, these guys are more athletic. A lot of these guys, you know what I'm saying, are stronger. The technology allows them to heal faster. The science, like imagine if Penny Hardaway came out around this era. He probably be dominant too. He had that knee injury. He probably has knee fixed good. Same thing with Grant Hill, fixed. You know what I mean? All these guys are like guinea pigs until they figured out how to keep these guys longevity. And these cats on that sauce, man. We're gonna get into an episode about these cats on that sauce soon. But at the end of the day, nah. I think people like Michael Jordan, the top 50 greatest players in his era, like Hakeem and all them, I think they'll all be able to hang in this era and dominate. It's just that people got so fixated with the offensive and shooting threes from half court and nobody playing on freaking defense and nobody getting really put in their butts that they feel that it's going to be light work. Yeah, handles are cool, but you only can go but so far with handles. So I'm going to go Menelik, Hollister, and I'll let Tom, kind of finish this one up because he was the one who brought this up. So go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as that's concerned, like you said, like looking at what he said, I understand some of the arguments that he tried to make on a base level as far as, okay, right, and with the advances in technology, science, recovery, this, that, and the third, right? Yeah. You have people who might have certain athletic attributes that people back in the day didn't have, right? But you also got to look at it from the flip side too, like the way the game is played, right? So, yeah, he mentioned, okay, the game is more tailored to offensive players now, right? Mm-hmm. So that also is a pro and a con. So yeah, defense is harder nowadays, right? Because you can't do things you used to be able to do, right? Yeah. But then that goes to show, like you said, with Jordan, right? He had to play when the game was less offensively tailored. It wasn't as tailored for offensive players. So he could play in this era, and he probably would have dominated more. Not every player would be in that boat, but a lot of the players too, you kind of adjust and you adapt to what is relevant for your era too, right? Now, like Shaq used to say when he first came, and he could handle somewhat, he could do some of that coast to coast, but they would have told him, get the hell out of here. What is you doing? They wouldn't allow him to do that. It's kind of like Steph Curry, right? How he made pulling up from the logo a viable shot. Back in the day, you couldn't do that. Like no coach, no thing, you wouldn't have been able to be allowed to do that, right? So nowadays, people adapted, and like bigs nowadays are playing with a little more skill or doing certain things. But like you said, my guy Hakeem, right? He played with a certain level of skill for a center in that era, right? Where he was doing some of the stuff these guys are doing nowadays way ahead of his time, right? Now, I also feel like the great players, they would have adapted their games and did what they needed to do. Like even with Jordan, like people talk about Jordan and like, oh, because even sometimes people make the argument about Jordan against Kobe, Jordan against other people, they're like, oh, like LeBron might be a better 3-point shooter than Jordan, this, that, and that, right? Like Jordan didn't have, the game wasn't as reliant or prevalent. Like offenses weren't based on just shooting threes and doing other stuff. Jordan showed, I know it's like a small sample size, but in that Blazers game, like when Cass was talking about Drexler and all that, right? He showed like Jordan is that kind of competitor, that guy. He would have upped his 3-point shooting over his career if that's the way the game is played. I know people gonna say, how do you know that? It's speculative. Nah, I know it. But beyond that, like he would have did it, but because the great people, they adapt to how the game is played, how to be efficient, whether it's coaches, players, offense or defense. So I think there will be some players who would play better in this era, some players from the past who will play worse, and vice versa. There's some players from this era that could get buckets or do this or do that. And if you put them in that old era, they would not be performing. So once again, I understand part of what KG was like, the feeling, emotion, like, oh man, people are like faster, stronger, they're this, they're that. Oh, people cross you and like tear your ACL or other stuff he was saying, right? But it's like also, it's like back in the day, the way defense was played, people couldn't do some of the stuff they were doing. And also just the game was just not played a certain way. So I think it's still like I said, my personal feeling is that there would be some players, if you put them in this era, they would not do as well. And some players who, if you put in this era, would do better than they did before, and vice versa. I think some players from today's game would kill in the old era, and some players would just be worse in the new era. So that's how I feel about it.
Okay. Hollister?
Yeah, I agree with what Melik said. And to KG's statement, I'm like, part of it I agree with and part of it I disagree with.
Yeah.
I understand what he's saying. Like these guys, back in the day, the players wouldn't really, because he said they couldn't play in today's NBA. I disagree with that because I feel like a lot of these older players that we grew up on watching actually, they will easily drop 50 every night against these guys because there's no defense being played. These guys don't like to be touched. They care more about shooting and looking good and, having their social media blow up and making highlights for YouTube and like crossing people up, like Melik said as well too. And it's like, to disagree with the part I disagree with KG is like, all right, himself, I don't think he will be able to last in this era today.
Yeah.
As himself, because he's more of like an intensity guy. He would get a whole bunch of technicals. He'd be like the Rasheed Wallace, like I get a whole bunch of technicals, Rodman, all those guys. He wouldn't survive because he's kind of stiff. He was kind of stiff back then. Sorry, Mike, but he was kind of stiff. Like these guys, like imagine him going up against like Kyrie or Dame, like they will destroy him. Like his ankles and his ACLs.
You talking about KG? You talking about Kevin Garnett?
Yeah.
No.
His ankles and ACLs.
Let's give the man credit. He was like one of the first bigs that actually showed some level of athleticism. I just think I have my opinion on why he said it, and I'll let you finish in time. I know Tom gonna go, man. Obviously,
I think he might have had a better chance back in the day with that intensity, even though he would probably got choked out by Charles Oakley, all those guys. But but like these guys in the NBA today, like Tom always say, it's soft. You can't touch nobody. They don't like this. They don't like that. They care more about being flashy and the fashion and social media stuff. They don't really care. They don't have that love for the game like the guys back in the day did. Yeah. And that's like my whole point. That love and that care for the game is gone because these guys get paid all this money. I'm not knocking them. They get paid tons of money. It's like once they sign that contract, they don't care. Back in the day, Jordan and them guys, they was barely getting paid compared to these guys now. So it's like, all right.
Yeah. They would thrive for them cats to get paid.
They would thrive.
Yeah. I said, yeah, you're right. I said Michael Jordan and them paid their dues. If it was for Michael Jordan, let's be honest, basketball wouldn't have been as big. You wouldn't get no Dirks. You wouldn't get no freaking Lucas and all them other cats. Like, yeah, LeBron helped influence Luca, but the idea of making basketball such a prominent thing over there, and the people before him were inspired by Michael Jordan and his greatness. And if it wasn't for people like MJ and like some of the other players like Hakeem, Barkley, Shaq, and all them cats, the actual business of basketball would not have been as prevalent, and they wouldn't have been making as much money and having the clout that they have to do what they want to do and say what they want to say. But I'll let Tom get in there. If you're finished, Hollister, and then I'll say my piece on it.
Yeah, I'm done.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. I didn't expect that from him because he's from the 90s, the late 90s. He's more of a 2000s guy.
Yeah.
I give him that because he came in 95, but he didn't really hit his prime till like 2000, 2001-ish.
Yeah.
Even though he was an all-star, but he was the young fella, and those guys were the OGs. So I didn't expect that from him because he is old school. He plays old school. And he only retired a couple years ago. So it's not like he didn't play in this era. Even though he wasn't the same player he was. I didn't expect this from him. What people have to understand, and I don't need to play 8 to 10 years in the NBA to speak on this, because that's the thing with this generation nowadays. Yeah. They think that when you criticize something they do, the first thing they bring up is you don't know the game, you didn't play the game, so you don't know what you're saying. Yeah. Or if it's a person that's an old school guy, the first thing they say is he's hating and he's just an old bitter person. It's like Shaq said, like these guys don't know how to handle criticism. Yeah. So that right there alone lets me know how soft you are mentally in this era, because any little thing that's said about them, you're either hating on them or you don't know what you're talking about. So it like okay, he's an old player, so he don't know what he's talking about. He hating. What you want everybody to do? Suck up to you and talk about how nice you are and never criticize you like Dwayne Wade does, because he doesn't criticize anybody. So people don't hate on that. James Harden, when the trade happened, Shaq said what he said, so he had a problem with what Shaq said, but then it was like, oh, I'll give my love out to D Wade, because D Wade didn't say nothing like that. Yeah. So these players' mentality, their mental state alone lets me know that they're soft in this era than that one. It's like what Menelik and was saying too. They were more fundamentally sound back in our day. Guys knew their role. This generation, everybody thinks they can shoot 3-point shots. Yeah. Everybody thinks they're a shooter. I see 7-footers shooting threes, and they will say on games, when I watch these games, this guy, he should take more 3-point shots. Why? If you're 7 foot, 240, 250 pounds, get down low and score a high percentage shot. It's common sense basketball. The Los Angeles Lakers are the NBA champions. Do they really sit there and shoot 30 to 40 3-pointers a game? Like, really think about that for a second. Only the players that want to sound cool and be cool are the teams that don't win, that don't win. Like, the Warriors are the only team that were literally a jump shooting first team that's ever won the championship. And it seems like every team is trying to mimic that. When the Spurs before the Warriors, well, they were before the Warriors, but the Spurs, I think Spurs, the second time they played Miami after Ray Allen hit the shot, the Spurs kind of did that. They pretty much shot their way to a championship, but that wasn't their MO. They kind of just did it against Miami. They really only did it against Miami. But you got that Warriors era. The Cavaliers, they weren't like that. The Warriors were, and the Raptors. I think those are only 3 teams in the last 8 years to win championships. The Raptors weren't like that. They were a Kawhi. Kawhi was a mid-range guy and stuff like that. You had Kyle Lowry, like dogs like that, him and Van Fleet. So you didn't have that. So they think that because the Warriors did it, that's the MO to win titles. And that's where my talk about the IQ comes in. I think everybody's IQ back in the day was more, they were smarter back then. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, they're more athletic now. But just because you're more athletic does not necessarily mean you're better than the guys with the higher IQ. For example, Rajon Rondo, they play against guys like they played the Nuggets and stuff. And you would think one-on-one Jamal Murray could beat Rajon Rondo, but who looked better in that series? Rajon Rondo did. And same thing in the Miami series. But when Kevin says this era would cook and they would break ACLs and this, that, and the third, listen, we had our share of crossover guys too. Allen Iverson, Tim Hardaway.
Timothy.
Yo, don't walk around here acting like Rod Strickland. Like we had guys, and I could take it back to the street dudes, Sham God and Rafer Alston, Skip the Malou. Don't walk around Kenny Anderson. Yeah. I could name Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. Like those dudes had handle. Don't come on, KG. Like that's what I was. I'm not a KG hater, but I know me and Michael go at it with him. But I expected him. I was disappointed to hear he said stuff like this. Like he acted like it was dudes that was dribbling the ball like Bob Cousy back in the day that played in the 90s, man. And not everybody was built like that. Like we had big, and they had bigs back then.
You act like Isaiah Thomas didn't have any skills.
Isaiah Thomas, and I'm not an Isaiah fan, but Isaiah Thomas had that kind of hand. Penny Hardaway, 6'7". He was the same height as not Magic, but he was around. He was that Magic Johnson type of dude. Steve Smith, old Atlanta Hawks. Steve Smith. Yeah. Magic Johnson. Like, don't act like these dudes didn't have. Don't act like we didn't have great point guards. Gary Payton.
Miller. Let me stop being funny.
For real. As a shooter though, Miller. For real. One of the greatest shooters ever.
Ray Allen said, "Yo, he don't care about no Steph Curry. The GOAT of shooting is Reggie Miller."
Reggie Miller is look. We had shooters too. Reggie Miller, Chris Mullin, Mark Price, Dale Ellis, Detlef Schrempf. Yeah. Don't come to me telling me about don't get me wrong. Steph is the best shooter I ever saw.
Me too. Steph is and y'all know Miller was my guy.
Steph is the best shooter that he's considered the best shooter. Me personally, I did just say what I just said, but I've always told people I think Klay Thompson's a better shooter, but that's more like with his form. Yeah. Like his form is the best I ever seen. Like his form is the best form I ever seen in basketball. But Steph Curry has the title. Don't get me wrong. But I think the guys' IQ are better now than back then. I know I was trying. I need to get into that because I've been going on. But I think the
guys' IQ is better back then than it is now.
The IQ is better back then. Like dudes, I watch these games and nobody knows how to rebound the ball. Like everything is shoot. And I'm a big fan of Zion Williamson, right? But there's no way he should be getting 3 and 4 rebounds in games. He's built like Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley for his career averaged 11, 12 rebounds a game.
But
there's no way.
Charles Barkley ain't got that kind of hops, man. Charles Barkley ain't got that
kind of hops. Charles Barkley ain't got kind of hops. And you just helped my argument even more. Mm-hmm. Charles Barkley had that kind of hops, but he was still getting 11, 12 rebounds a game when there was trees back there. Yeah. Zion Williamson, there's no trees there. I watched the game last night. He's hovering over the 3-point line. He's when a player shoots, he's just standing. He's not boxing out to get the rebound. Like nobody boxes out anymore. It's almost like you just stand there with your 2 hands and hope the ball comes to you. That's pretty much what rebounding is now in the NBA. Yeah. They just stand there and wait for the ball to come to them. Nobody boxes out anymore unless it's the free throw line. And even sometimes they don't box out. But the IQ is it's not the same. And just because you got handled, like listen, man, he's acting like these dudes is hot sauce and all these N1 mixtape dudes. They're not. I really only see guys like Kyrie and a couple of other guys. Like there's nobody else that really blows my mind when it comes to handle. So to cut it short, I wanted to go a little long, but I don't really want to do that. But the IQ is better. Yes, they're more athletic, but think about it. If those guys came to this era and played, how is it? Like, which way do you want it? Do they come over as they were in the 90s, or do they get the same treatment, the nutrition, the workout, the medication that they get now? Yeah. Can those same players come down, like you know what I'm saying? Like that way. Can they come over and have the same advantages that you have now and play? Yeah. Because they have different diets now and everything. Can they come and use those things? You tell me that. And then we can talk about that because A guy like Michael Jordan, you're crazy if you think he couldn't play in this era. You're crazy.
Yeah, and that's to your point. And I'll just to wrap this up, like you said, is like, let me turn it. Don't mind that. That's just the lamp I have here for extra lighting. But yeah, so at the end of the day, like you said, 100% accurate. Like Michael Jordan will kill in this era because first of all, we all understand that back in the day, basketball was more about the purity of the game. That's why they put more emphasis into like details. Even then, everybody was talking about why the Knicks couldn't run the triangle when Carmelo was over there and they had Derek Fisher running the team. And BJ Armstrong said it like, look, BJ Armstrong said, look, man, a lot of these guys, they don't have the fundamentals. And because they don't have the fundamentals, they cannot run the offense the way they need to have it. Now, a lot of these guys, yes, they're athletically gifted, but let's be honest here. A lot of these guys don't play set of defense in them AAU programs, and everything's about flashiness and crossovers, the up and under layups and all the other stuff like that. And a lot of the guys from back in the day had it. Now, I agree with Tyron. I was really surprised to hear KG say that because KG's an old school dude. He was also in the camp criticizing some of the young dudes, and he was also passing the knowledge on. There's nothing wrong with passing knowledge on to the younger generation to help them get better. But these guys were so great. A lot of them wouldn't need some of the information from like a Hakeem to work on footwork. If Hakeem was playing in this era right now, Hakeem would be the only person I feel would give Hakeem a little bit of a challenge would probably be Embiid because Embiid kind of resembles some of that kind of creativity with the counters. Other than that, Giannis would get mixed. Who else? Like freaking Joker would get mixed.
Embiid is too slow for Olajuwon.
No, I know that, but I'm just trying to say as far as like the movement, like Embiid has some counters in his post.
Yeah, it's okay, but he likes to shoot three. He's kind of
that's what I'm saying. I mean, look, I get that part, but I'm just trying to say some of the stuff. A lot of these modern day centers can't mess with no Hakeem, right? And I wrote this down now. God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant, right? A lot of these younger cats, they idolize Kobe. They say Kobe Bryant, right? Whatever. And I seen footage of Kobe cooking these modern day players, like the James Harden, cooking LeBron, cooking all these modern day players, right? And Kobe Bryant was older than them, right? But his skill set and his basketball key was way higher, and he's better than them. Now, and the reason why I'm bringing up Kobe Bryant is because we already know that Kobe patented his game off of Mike, right? And he know that he was chasing that ghost of Michael Jordan. So he always make a little comment like, yo, if the old man watching this, that, well, I know Michael Wilbon was talking about that too, and etc. He rose to that challenge. So you imagine Kobe Bryant, he kind of like played in both eras, but at the tail end of his career, he has so many injuries, so many like things, and carrying the Lakers for the most part, right? That he didn't really get to flourish in this kind of new era of basketball where there's more, offensive minded and stuff like that. And his efficiency wasn't as good as Mike. So imagine Michael Jordan, right? With his efficiency, his skill set, his determination to win, Michael Jordan will probably average 50 points a game in this generation right now. And all this crossing over stuff is cool, but crossing over don't get you points. It ain't like, it's not like a freaking Olympic, like freaking, games or Olympic, like freaking, like a floor routine. Like he got 2 points for crossover. It don't matter. What matters is the ball going in the basket. You know what I'm saying? You can cross somebody up and get your joint pinned and sent to the upper deck. You know what I'm saying? You can cross somebody up and cause a turnover. You can cross somebody and pass the ball and somebody stumbled. Like none of that matters. What matters is putting the ball in the hoop. When it comes to putting the ball in the hoop, Michael Jordan was one of the best, if not the best, at doing that. So to me, KG kind of shocked me, but I think he's coming from a place where it's like he's selling a book, obviously. You know what I mean? He has a book that came out. You know what I'm saying? And also, he's trying to be on like the Dwayne Wade side of the fence, where it's like, he don't want to criticize the young dudes, and he want to be like that kind of big brother kind of thing. And they trying to do this thing against Charles Barkley and Shaq, whereas Shaq and them are like totally old school. Cause even like I watched it and they was talking about like when Shaq was getting on, I think it was Shaq, Candace Parker, D Wade, and some other guys talking about it. And Shaq was like, no, man, I'm not saying that. I'm trying to say this is what I look. My pops told me this, and this is what it is. And I want to see how these guys be great. I'm not hating on them. I'm just want to let them know, like, you got to take this criticism. You can't think that because you doing this and that's the other and feeling a certain kind of way. And then, Dwayne Wade was trying to cover for this person and saying that, but what about Rudy Gobert? He's like trying to say, if you want to do these things, you can make it too. You can make this kind of money. And like, some of it, a little bit could be hate. But a lot of the stuff that they're trying to say, I understood it because that's the era that they came from. And this modern day era, everybody have to have accolades with everybody giving them props. Now, granted, all these players are talented. You have to be talented to make it to NBA. Only 400 something players, so you have to have some level of skill. But at the end of the day, I feel that There's a little bit too much of sensitivity in here. Like them old school coaches that got like people like Jordan and them and Miller and all them cats to the next level, they couldn't coach this day and age because they'll get fired and show the door. It's too much centered around like coddling and nobody's being held accountable, which is why a lot of these teams are underachieving. And I feel that what KG said to bring it all back together, I just feel it's coming from a place of not what he actually feels that way, but it's just trying to give, credence and, kind of pat the kids on the back so they can continue to do what they're supposed to do and keep the game going, because I guess they was getting like this rumblings getting around like, Charles Barkley and them saying these different things and everybody, all these old heads hating, and KG don't want to be put under that old head category, and he a Hall of Famer. He just want to make sure his stuff is locked in and do that. And that's where I feel that's coming from. But anyway, just to close up the podcast, as we know, tonight is a UFC fight tonight, Usman versus Burns. Kamaru Usman, who is the welterweight champion at 170, he's fighting his old teammate Gilbert Burns. And just to give a quick run, I'm just going to talk about that. There's other fights on the card, but I'm just going to talk about that because that's like the most important fight of the night. There's a lot of things being made about this whole there was teammates and the JV guy versus the varsity guy and all this other stuff like that. Friend versus friends become foes, all this other crap and those narrative and stuff like that. But I'm just gonna put my point out. I want Kamaru Usman to win, obviously. You know what I'm saying? I like him. No disrespect to Gilbert Burns. I think he's a great competitor. I think he worked hard to get where he had to get to. But I do kind of understand where Usman's coming from, was like, hey man, I took you under my wing. I kind of help you get to your level where you at. And you see me with this championship and you see what I have, and you're going to try to say to yourself that I want to take that from him, take that from my daughter. It's kind of like a personal thing. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like you was fighting another division. You stop fighting that division. Now you come in my division and now you want to fight me for the belt and think I'm supposed to be like, okay, man, you beat me up, man. I see you at the barbecue tomorrow. Like, nah, man. Nah. So I hope Kamaru wins, breaks GSP record of most consecutive win streak in the division. And yeah, that's just me. So I want to go Tyron Hollister, and I'll let Malik finish it off, and then we can wrap.
Yeah, I've seen Burns. He's okay. Not a top guy. Usman, he's like one of the best fighters in the world. He may be a little boring. He might not be that popular with a lot of people, his style. But I see him maybe a third. I want to say, because it's 5 rounds of the main event title match. So I'm going to say either a third or fourth round submission. That's what I'm going to go with as a prediction. Usman. I don't think Usman's losing this fight. I think he's gonna win, and might win pretty easily because of his style. And that's pretty much what I'm going with. I'm not too knowledgeable on the UFC, but I do know those two fighters, and I'm going to pick Usman on that one.
I don't really know much about Gilbert Burns, but his last name says it all. Usman is going to burn him. I say by decision. I got Usman winning. I hope he really does retain, because I'm a big fan of Usman. Even though, like Tyron said, people find his style kind of boring. Hey, as long as you do what you got to do, and he's definitely a fighter that shows people you could, wear down your opponent other ways than just instead of going for the knockout. People need to pay attention to that. With that being said, I got Usman via decision.
Okay.
Yeah, so like Michael said, they are former teammates. They used to train with each other. They have that kind of background, that narrative. And, it's like that coming over to the division, doing this, doing that. I definitely, want Usman to win. He has that, once again, he could, break that GSP record of most title defenses. He has shown, he's a champion. He has some, most recently he fought Masvidal because, him and Burns were supposed to fight then, but Burns got COVID, so he had to pull out, and then Masvidal jumped in last minute, and then Usman, won that fight. Burns is like more decorated as far as like on the ground, as far as jiu-jitsu. I know he's like a world champion in that regard, but, Usman obviously is a very good wrestler, and I think he's shown, people are not always the biggest fan of his style, but, he's shown that he could win in different ways and that he is well-rounded. And he is a champion. He go out there, he try to compete, fight who he got to fight. He had that fight against Colby as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think Usman will do what he needs to do to get the win. Burns is a threat just because, like I said, he is no slouch, and he is pretty lethal as far as the jiu-jitsu stuff. Yeah. But Usman has seen it. I think they trained for like 10 years together. I don't know, some like a long time. I mean, that could help and hurt both of them. And obviously they made changes since then, this, that, and the third. But I think Usman will do what he needs to do to get the W.
I agree. I look at it like this, man. I feel like with the Usman Burns thing, like Town, I was surprised you said submission because Usman Burns is known to be a submission guy. That was what he came in there doing, submissions, and he fell in love with knocking people out because he started getting hands and learning that he has power in his hands. My thing is that I think Usman got a bad rap because of his personality, his like quiet demeanor, and also his style of fighting. Like he always smothers and like beat guys up. Like when he first started, he was wrestling guys and just smothering them and beating them up. Now people love it from Khabib, they love it from GSP when GSP is fighting like that. I mean, they used to criticize GSP a little bit, but all of a sudden,
I know what you mean.
All of a sudden, like Usman doing it, he back, and he wanted to come in and just bang. And I think what made him get that little bit of an issue with Dana White at the time when he was like talking about that was only 30%. Like he was just trying to say like, yo, he was at 30% health, and that's why he did that. But the way he made it seem like he said, oh, it's 30% to beat this guy, and being about 30%, you look that terrible. Like maybe you should use 100% next time. So for me, the narrative is funny. Like now, Usman, he's a guy who was part of the Black Zillions, and he was with like Rashad Evans is his like OG. And we all know, like me a lot. Well, me and Malik, we kind of know, Malik and I, where that Rashad Evans was in a similar situation as Usman. Mm-hmm. Rashad Evans used to train at Jackson's, and here comes this young stud, Johnny Bones Jones. And John Bones was training with Rashad Evans, and they were good friends going fishing. I'm thinking thick as thieves, right? That's like how Burns and freaking Usman was. And then what happened was John Jones got in the same division. They started taking a liking to John Jones, this young up-and-coming cat. He's exciting. He can fight. He's looking good. And they started putting more attention into John Jones. And, Rashad didn't like it. So Rashad left. John Jones happened to win the title. Rashad ended up getting close enough to fight John Jones. And we already know John Jones murked that cat. So it's like at the end of the day, I mean, it was a decision. John Jones still put the beats on him. But I do feel that Usman will not fall victim to that. I just think that Usman is well-rounded enough to mix it up. I always feel like this when I see people getting knocked out and people knocking people out, that I feel that, hey man, Usman could probably get caught with something, get knocked out. You know what I'm saying? Because Burns got heavy hands, but Burns did go the distance with Tom Woodley. He dominated Tom Woodley, and I feel that Usman is very strong. And like DC and Hawani and them say, like, when you're in training, you spar with somebody, y'all know who is better. Y'all kind of know who got like the edge and who's like just going through the motions. And I feel that maybe Burns might know, like, hey, Usman ain't no joke, and I gotta hope I catch him with some of these things, because I've seen like the embedded where this cat had like freaking more of those like those science fair project board level like long like strategy to figure out to fight this cat. You know what I mean? So to me, I feel like he's taking it very seriously, but I feel that he's more panicking, like he's putting so many ideas and thoughts into like fighting this guy, that I feel that Usman already kind of have that mental battle won already. It's just that after that first punch is thrown and that first kick is, thrown, I think then you're going to see how deep they're going to take it. I do agree with Hollister. I think it might be a decision type of fight. I don't really see Usman knocking out Burns. If anybody get KO, God forbid, I think it might be Usman, because he's the other kids know Burns is known for knockouts and submission. I wouldn't put it past it. Maybe, your boy can submit him, Usman, but I feel that Burns is more like the submission tacticianer. So we'll see. But I do have Usman winning this fight, and I do hope he wins. You know what I mean? It has a lot of other fights coming up, and I just really want him to win, because I want him to get those records and, get his name out there, get that accolade from him. His father just came home from jail and all that stuff like that because of what happened in the past. I didn't have like some documentary on that, but yeah, I want him to win. So I guess it's Usman across the board for all of us. Hopefully we won't do a Kansas City Chiefs because we always say Kansas City Chiefs, and we know what happened to them in the Super Bowl. So Usman for the win. But anyway, I'm just gonna wrap this up. You know, I'm gonna try to keep this under a certain time, and I'm glad you guys were able to make it. Thank you, Hollister, for making it. I know you're busy. Tyrone, Menlake as well. Like I said earlier, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your evening. I know this is a weekend of love, what they say. Well, Valentine's Day. Enjoy it with your loved ones. You don't have no relationship to be like, oh, happy Valentine's. You don't got to do all that. You know what I'm saying? But just, we're grateful to be alive. We're grateful to have one another. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your families. Take care and God bless. My, honey,